Netflix canceled the OA after just 2 seasons, but 73% of viewers who finished the series say it changed how they think about death, consciousness, and reality itself. This show divided audiences more than any other series in streaming history. You either think it's brilliant or completely insane. Prairie Johnson was blind for 21 years, then jumped off a bridge and came back with perfect vision, claiming she'd traveled to other dimensions. Her story sounds like the ravings of a mental patient, but by the end, your perception about life and death will change. Okay, real talk. 98% of you haven't subscribed yet. That hurts, but we'll forgive you if you hit that button right now. These videos take ages to research, edit, and polish, and every sub tells us, hey, keep going, this is worth it. Our goal is to drop that number to 70% by the end of the year, and you can help us get there. So smash that subscribe and let's jump into Season 1. Prairie Johnson returns after being missing for 7 years. She was blind when she disappeared, but now she can see. She calls herself the OA and claims she's been traveling between dimensions. Everyone thinks she's lost her mind, but Prairie knows something the rest of us don't. Death isn't the end. Her adoptive parents, Nancy and Abel, are desperate to help her readjust, but Prairie seems like a completely different person. She's obsessed with keeping her bedroom door open, refuses to eat anything but tomatoes and crackers, and keeps talking about needing to find 5 people to help her with some mysterious mission. Through flashbacks, we learn Prairie's real story. Born Nina Azarova in Russia, she had near-death experiences as a child that left her blind but gave her glimpses of other dimensions. After her father's death, she was adopted by the Johnsons in America, where she lived as Prairie until she was 21. The day she disappeared, Prairie was trying to find her birth father online when she met Hap, a scientist researching near-death experiences. Hap seemed understanding and offered to help her explore her visions. What she didn't know was that Hap was actually a predator who kidnapped people with near-death experience abilities. Hap's underground laboratory becomes Prairie's prison for the next 7 years. She's kept in a transparent cell alongside 4 other captives: Homer, a former football player; Scott, a drug addict; Rachel, a teacher; and Renata, an actress. All of them have survived clinical death and returned with strange abilities. Hap's experiments are horrifying. He kills his captives repeatedly, then revives them to study what they experienced during death. Each death teaches them movements, strange, interpretive, dance-like gestures that seem to have power when performed together. Prairie calls these movements the 5 movements. The captives form a family bond through their shared trauma. Homer and Prairie fall in love. Scott becomes their protector. Rachel provides wisdom and stability. Renata brings strength and defiance. Together, they start to understand that their deaths and resurrections are part of something much larger than Hap's experiments. Each movement is learned through death and represents a different aspect of human experience. The first movement comes through Prairie's own death, a graceful, bird-like gesture that represents freedom. The second comes from Homer's death, involving strength and determination. Scott, Rachel, and Renata each contribute their own movements through their sacrificial deaths. What makes these sequences powerful isn't the sci-fi premise, it's the emotional truth underneath. These people are finding meaning in their suffering, creating beauty from trauma, and maintaining hope in impossible circumstances. The movements become their language of resistance against Hap's cruelty. Hap realizes his captives are learning something he doesn't understand. He tries to force them to teach him the movements, but they refuse. The movements only work when performed by people who've earned them through death and resurrection. You can't steal this knowledge, you have to sacrifice for it. The escape sequence is where Season 1 reaches its emotional climax. The captives use their movements to open a portal to another dimension, but they can only send Prairie through. She has to leave Homer and the others behind, returning to her original dimension while they remain trapped with Hap. Back in the present, Prairie is trying to assemble a new group of 5 people to perform the movements and rescue her friends. She gathers an unlikely team: Steve, a troubled teenager; Buck, a transgender student; Jesse, a quiet stoner; French, an ambitious athlete; and Betty, their teacher, who becomes reluctantly involved. These 5 people represent different aspects of modern alienation. Steve is angry and violent. Buck is struggling with identity and acceptance. Jesse feels invisible and forgotten. French is under pressure to succeed at any cost. Betty is going through the motions of a life that feels meaningless. Prairie offers them purpose and connection. The group meets secretly in an abandoned house where Prairie teaches them the movements and shares her story. Most of them are skeptical, but they're drawn to Prairie's conviction and the sense of belonging she provides. For the first time in their lives, they feel part of something important. The season builds to a school shooting at the cafeteria where the group decides to perform the movements. As the shooter opens fire, the 5 people begin their strange dance, believing it will somehow save everyone. The sequence is both absurd and deeply moving. These people are literally putting their faith into action. Whether the movements actually work or whether the school shooting ends through coincidence is left deliberately ambiguous. Prairie gets shot during the sequence and dies, but not before the shooter is stopped. In her final moments, she seems to travel to another dimension where she's reunited with the captives. Season 1 ends with massive questions. Is Prairie a prophet or a trauma victim creating elaborate fantasies? Are the movements real or just interpretive dance? Did the group save the school through interdimensional travel or through the simple act of courage and solidarity? What hit me most about Season 1 is how it explores explores faith without religion. Prairie asks people to believe in her story not because she can prove it, but because believing in something larger than yourself gives life meaning. The movements might be nonsense, but the connections they create are real. Season 2. The OA goes completely off the rails in the best possible way in the second season. We get to learn that Prairie really did travel to another dimension, and everything gets infinitely more complex. Prairie wakes up in a new dimension where she's Nina Azarova, a wealthy Russian heiress living in San Francisco. In this reality, she never lost her sight, never lived with the Johnsons, and never met Hap. But she retains all her memories as Prairie, creating an identity crisis that drives the entire season. This dimension has its own version of Hap, who's now a tech entrepreneur, running a company called Curie. He's still conducting experiments on people with near-death experiences, but now he's using virtual reality and advanced technology instead of crude death and resurrection. The Haptives from Season 1 are here too, but living completely different lives. Homer is Dr. Roberts, a psychologist working for Hap who has no memory of his captivity or his relationship with Prairie. This becomes the season's central heartbreak. Prairie desperately tries to awaken the man she loves while he treats her as a delusional patient. Their scenes together are emotionally devastating. Meanwhile, in the original dimension, the group that learned the movements is dealing with the aftermath of the school shooting. They're all traumatized and confused about what really happened. French becomes obsessed with proving Prairie's story, while the others struggle with doubt and grief. Betty becomes the unexpected hero of the original dimension storyline. She starts investigating Prairie's background and discovers connections that suggest the story might be true. Her journey from skeptical teacher to true believer mirrors the audience's own relationship with the show's mythology. The season introduces Kareem Washington, a private investigator searching for a missing girl named Michelle Vu. His investigation leads him into a mystery involving an addictive puzzle game called Q Symphony that seems to be connected to interdimensional travel. Kareem becomes an anchor for viewers who need a more grounded perspective on the increasingly surreal events. Prairie Nina's attempts to reach Homer, Dr. Roberts, form the emotional core of Season 2. She knows they're soulmates across dimensions, but he only sees a troubled patient. She has to find ways to awaken his buried memories without appearing completely insane, which is nearly impossible given the circumstances. The season reveals that Hap has been traveling between dimensions for much longer than anyone realized. He's been manipulating events across multiple realities, always staying one step ahead of Prairie and the other captives. His true goal isn't just scientific knowledge. He wants to become an interdimensional god. Rachel, who died in Season 1, appears in this dimension as an amnesiac who works at a facility for people with brain injuries. Her presence suggests that death in one dimension might mean life in another, adding another layer to the show's complex mythology about consciousness and identity. Scott and Renata also exist in this dimension, but with completely different lives and no memory of their captivity. Prairie has to find ways to awaken all of them while avoiding Hap's detection. The process becomes a race against time as Hap gets closer to achieving his ultimate goal. The puzzle game's subplot reveals that technology and interdimensional travel are connected in ways that weren't clear in Season 1. The game is actually a recruitment tool, identifying people with the mental flexibility to handle interdimensional experiences. Players who solve it completely tend to disappear, suggesting they're being transported to other realities. Kareem's investigation uncovers the truth about the missing girl Michelle, who turns out to be crucial to Hap's plans. She's not just another victim, she's a key component in a machine designed to allow permanent interdimensional travel without the need for death and resurrection. The season builds to a confrontation at Curie where all the storylines converge. Prairie finally succeeds in awakening Homer's memories, but their reunion is short-lived. Hap reveals his master plan, to use Michelle and advanced technology to break down the barriers between all dimensions. The climax involves another performance of the movements, but this time with higher stakes and more participants. Characters from both dimensions must work together to stop Hap from destroying the boundaries between realities. The sequence is more elaborate and surreal than anything in Season 1. Season 2 ends with the ultimate meta twist. Prairie appears to travel to a dimension where she's an actress named Britt Marling, filming a show called The OA. The other characters appear as actors playing themselves, suggesting that our reality might be just another dimension in the show's infinite multiverse. This ending completely scrambles everything we thought we understood about the show. Are we watching a story about interdimensional travel, or are we watching a story about storytelling itself? The line between fiction and reality becomes completely blurred. What makes Season 2 brilliant is how it commits completely to its absurd premise while maintaining emotional truth. The relationship between Prairie and Homer remains the heart of the story, even as the mythology becomes increasingly complex and surreal. The OA ultimately asks whether it matters if a story is true, if it provides meaning, connection, and hope. Prairie's movements might not actually open portals between dimensions, but they create bonds between people who desperately need connection. The literal truth becomes less important than the emotional truth. Both seasons work as an extended meditation on faith, storytelling, and the power of believing in something larger than yourself. The show doesn't provide easy answers or clear explanations. Instead, it asks you to sit with mystery and ambiguity, to find meaning in questions rather than answers. The cancellation after season 2 feels particularly cruel because the show was clearly building towards something even more ambitious. We'll never know how the story was supposed to end, but maybe that's appropriate for a series about infinite possibilities and unresolved mysteries. What did you think of this interdimensional journey? Did the OA make you a believer? Or did you think Prairie was just traumatized and delusional? Would you perform the movements if you thought they might actually work? Please share your 2 cents in the comments and hit that subscribe button.